Hello everyone. I want to look at another Endgame here, uh, and show you how to basically convert an Endgame or the advantageous position. As always, if you would like, you can pause the video and set up your chessboard and analyze the position yourself for a few minutes before I get in to the analysis. Okay, now this position, now I have it, the board reversed so you can see it from the, black's perspective. This position is from Warsaw, Poland tournament in 1947, so after World War II. And with the white pieces was a player named Ludek Pachman, who actually wrote a great book. Um, I can't remember the name right now. Uh, but Ludwig Pachman was a top player at the time, and with the black, he had the white pieces, and with the black pieces, we had Isaac Boleslavsky, who is one of the top Russian players for a long time, and a great theorist, and that he contributed a lot to the theory in Sicilian defense and King's Indian defense in its early stages. Now, in this position, it's black to move. White has just played the move knight d2. And we can see, looking at white's position, that although the pawn structures are symmetrical, um, that black's pieces um, are a bit better than their counterparts. Um, Black's knight on e4 is better than the knight on d2. So Pachman, wants to get rid of that knight on d2 because that, excuse me, yeah, I'm sorry, Pachman wants to get rid of the black knight on e4, and one of the reasons why is because that knight on e4 is creating pressure on the position. As we can see, the rook is forced to guard the f2 pawn, and that immobilizes the rook. So the knight on e4 is very powerful. So therefore, Pachman played a knight d2. Um, Now, comparing all the pieces, we see that the black rook, Boleslavsky's rook, is on the d file. Not that it can look forward to really penetrating, but if we're just comparing pieces, the black rook is better, and we had to give the nod even to the black bishop, black's dark square bishop being better. And also, I think the most important feature is the king position. Um, Notice that Boleslavsky's king on e6 can penetrate to through these light squares onto the king side. This is very important that black has this access, whereby Pachman does not have the same ability to cross over into um, the black queen side over here. So to me, that's one of the most important features in the position. Another thing to realize too is notice the color of the bishop. You have a dark square bishop here, and then notice all these pawns on dark squares. Okay, and black's pawns over here on dark squares also. However, he can move these. He still has time where he can move these pawns off of the dark squares. Whereas for white, it would be more problematic. Again, say a move like f3, this is would be captured. All right. So taking it from the move knight d2, uh, Pachman has played to get rid of it. So here, Boleslavsky plays knight takes d2 and bishop takes d2. Of course, not king takes d2 because that would just be asking for some type of discovered check here. All right, so we don't want to do that. Bishop takes d2, and now Boleslavsky plays a move that nowadays one might take for granted, but nevertheless is great for your strategic arsenal. That's e4. Why does he play e4? Just keeping the pawns on the same color as this bishop. The more pawns on the dark squares, the more restricted this bishop is on d2. All right. He doesn't rush in with the king. He could have played f5 here, but then white may have played f3. So I'll give you a quick example. So king f5, f3. And then white would have had to play, move like e4. Let's say e4 for instance. Now this pawn is on prise. And then the game could get kind of sloppy after g4. Because you had this rook here, king here. And it's not as clear cut. All right. And that's one thing is you want to try to limit counterplay and confusion in the position if you can. White has black has a nice advantage here as far as having better pieces and his king being closer to the center and having access to the king side. So you want to keep things as simple as possible. You don't want to give up all type of counter shots to the opponent. So after e4, which is a great move, solidifying these pawns, Pachman plays rook d1, and Boleslavsky played bishop e7. Now, I like bishop e5 better. I mean, that looks natural to me. All right. Now, bishop e7 is not a bad move because it keeps the bishop on this diagonal right here where this pawn is. And it's anticipating the advance of these pawns. So the bishop will be there to basically harass those pawns as they try to move forward. So it wasn't that he was putting his bishop, on like an empty diagonal, or neglecting a good diagonal here. It's just that there's really nothing here for the bishop. But on e7, it's going to work against these pawns. Rook a1. And now Boleslavsky plays bishop d6. And now the idea is to get back on e5 and hit this rook right here. So it goes back, rook d1. And Boleslavsky plays bishop e5. So he must have heard me, in the time machine and then decided to correct the error of his ways. So now bishop b4 is played by Pachman, inviting a change of rooks. And here's another good lesson in converting these type of endings. And you might say, well, what is there to convert? Everything is even. Yes, material is even, but not everything. So rook takes d1, king takes d1. And when I say everything is not even, these are the skills that you must acquire. Yes, the material is even, but like I said, black's bishop is better than white's bishop, and his king is better than the white king. And therefore, this allows him to place pressure on the position. So black is definitely better here. Look at where white's king is after the change. He's on d1, where black's king is already in the center. So let's see what happens, right? And like I alluded to earlier, the simple plan for black is just to get the king here and just place some pressure on the position. When this pawn is attacked, he can always just go to a6. And that's like the good part about being able to move your pawns off the opposite color of the bishop. Whereas white on the other hand, these pawns are fixed. They can't move without serious weakness or loss of material. So if this bishop, magically was able to get around here somehow, these pawns would be gone in a minute. So basically, white is trying to hold this position somehow. He would have to find a way to guard his pawns, and at the same time, maybe try to harass black. But again, it's too easy for black to move his pawns to light squares. So it's one of those situations where black is only playing for two results, either to win or draw. So after king takes d1, king f5, king e2. So he's anticipating, Pachman that is anticipating Boleslavsky coming in to f3. So he puts his king on e2 to prevent that. King g4. Right, so he gets close as possible. Bishop c5, attacking the a7 pawn. He just simply moves it to light square. Bishop d4. Now, again, here's just a like a wake-up call for like a lot of beginners and newbie chess players. Usually, it's very hard to win a one game, right? They say that's the hardest thing to win in chess. And you have to be careful. A lot of players, especially like in a time scramble or something like that, might rush and snap the bishop off right here, right? But then, just like that, it's black that has to retreat now, because now white has this 4-3 majority on the queen side, and now black would be forced to come back. Okay, so after king f5 and king e3. All right, and this is not what you want right here. So of course, Pachman tries to draw the game. He tries to swindle Boleslavsky. Boleslavsky simply just drops back, attacks this pawn. c5 is played. Now notice how, even though Pachman protects his pawn, he puts another pawn on dark square. And this bishop is starting to look like just like a big pawn. b4. So here's the key position, right? Now it looks like black has it looks like white has like a nice fortress, and his plan, Pachman's plan is just basically move this bishop just back and forth. How to make progress here. And now Boleslavsky finds the correct plan, basically like the only winning plan here, with the bishop on e7. She simply plays g5. This is a backbreaking move in the position, because if, say, Pachman just wanted to move his bishop back, then he's going to drop a pawn. For instance, if he did something silly like that, you just simply g takes. Right? Yeah, move like f5, for example, followed by bishop takes h4. Now notice I didn't play that move right away. Okay? Because after f3, you still would be winning after f5, but it just makes things, just a little more challenging. And you want to make things easy as possible. For instance, you could just play king h3 and be done with it. But just to try to be accurate, play a move like that. So back to the game. So all of a sudden, white is faced with this dilemma of what to do. So I'll face the loss of a pawn. So now he has to take, and then after f takes g5, black is just winning, because there's no way to stop this passed pawn. There's going to be a passed pawn created, and the only way to try to stop it is the king would have to be diverted from the protection of f2, whereby at the right time the king would just get up in here, and that would be all she wrote. So therefore, after bishop e5, h4, Pachman resigned, and that was it. So there's another one, another feather for your cap, another practical endgame. Opposite color bishops, which started out with some rooks on the board, and So that's it for that one. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you on the next one.